The final days of the Trump presidency are headed for a chaotic end.
We had discussions about what we needed to do. Everybody knows that this president is deranged.
In the aftermath of Wednesday's siege on Capitol Hill that left 5 dead, Democrats today met in the same building overtaken by Trump loyalists to discuss options for removing the lame duck president from office.
To the existence of this country and to the democracy that all of us hold dear.
Though Trump has less than 2 weeks left in office, Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee are circulating articles of impeachment, alleging that Trump willfully made statements that encouraged and foreseeably resulted in imminent lawless action at the Capitol. Article 2 of the Constitution gives Congress the power to remove the president and other federal officials in cases where enough lawmakers agree they committed treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors.
Treason and bribery, we have pretty good definitions for. We know what both of those are. But other high crimes and misdemeanors is where it gets a little hazy at times. And that's where the questions often arise. This is for bad behavior that does not necessarily rise to the level of a crime. President Gerald Ford once said that impeachable offenses are whatever a majority of the House considers them to be. So it's a pretty broad category.
To impeach a president, articles or charges are drafted and introduced through the House Judiciary Committee, beginning a process similar to a criminal trial. A majority of the House is needed to impeach and pass the case on to the Senate. The Senate then acts as a jury, where a 2/3 vote is required for a conviction and removal from office. Once convicted, the Senate can then, by a simple majority vote, bar Trump from ever running for office again.
With days left on a presidential term, some might say, well, what's the point of this? And those who are pushing for impeachment want a couple things. They want that public sanction, that stain of impeachment. They want that sanction to be in place. But they also are thinking about the future. And so this second sanction would come into play if it's late in the term. And that is disqualification from ever holding public office again. And that would require a simple vote, a simple majority rather, in order to disqualify someone from holding office again.
Bipartisan support will be needed for a conviction, and that may be hard to come by. In response to impeachment efforts by Democrats, current head of the Judiciary Committee, South Carolina Republican Lindsey Graham, today tweeted this: "Any attempt to impeach President Trump would not only be unsuccessful in the Senate, but would be a dangerous precedent for the future of the presidency." However, some Republicans refuse to toe the party line.
He was flagrantly disregarding his oath of office, so that's not in debate. The House, if they come together and have a process, I will definitely consider whatever articles they might move. What he did was wicked.
Only 3 U.S. presidents have been impeached: Andrew Johnson in 1868, Bill Clinton in 1998, and Trump in 2019. All were acquitted in the Senate. Richard Nixon resigned before he could be impeached in 1974. After the events of January 6th, President Trump has now agreed to a peaceful transfer of power, agreeing to accept Thursday's vote to certify Joe Biden as the winner of the national election.
Now Congress has certified the results. A new administration will be inaugurated on January 20th. My focus now turns to ensuring a smooth, orderly, and seamless transition of power. This moment calls for healing and reconciliation.
But today, Trump continued to incite his base, tweeting, "The 75 million great American patriots who voted for me, America First, and Make America Great Again, will have a giant voice long into the future. They will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form." If impeached, Donald Trump will become the first president in history to be impeached twice. Back in 2019, he was impeached for abuse of power, but the Republican-led Senate acquitted him in early 2020.
All right, Court TV anchor Michael Al joins us with the latest. So where do we stand tonight?
All right, Vinny. Well, House Democrats, they're planning to introduce an impeachment resolution on Monday. Now, they will then fast track it into a vote next week. But right now, House Democrats have not really committed yet to holding such a vote. Many are rather calling instead for his resignation and calling on Vice President Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment. But as we discussed yesterday, that could be problematic and is likely not to get the job done of actually removing him from office.
All right, so any sense of why they're not committing to a vote here? If they believe it, if they believe in it, they should vote, right?
Yeah, politics, Vinny. This is all politics, right? And there are a couple of issues. The Democrats are a bit worried that this could carry over into the first few days of the Biden administration. And frankly, they think it might be too much of a distraction during a new president and the beginning of his agenda. And other Democrats are worried that it's going too far, that to impeach Trump, that would perhaps maybe cause some of the voters in their districts to be a little bit angry. And, you know, on the heels of a hearing, I wondered if, considering that almost half the country did vote for Trump, barring him, for instance, under these circumstances, was going a bit too far. So I checked in with Professor Joe Mystic, the guy you saw in the piece, and he doesn't think so. He thinks that, you know, it's the right thing to do. Here's what he had to say.
In our system, the franchise doesn't mean that you get to win. It means you have a shot at winning. And, you know, if you're wise, you'll use that franchise vigorously. In every election, just about half the people lose and half the people win, and we move on. We move on with our business and we move on. We look forward to the next race. So this would not disenfranchise folks. In fact, I think that if you were to run that race today, in light of what happened this week, it probably would not be so close. I've spoken to some political columnists, newspaper columnists of national note, who have said to me as recently as this morning that it's different out there. So many of the regular people we talk to who usually rise to President Trump's defense aren't there now. They're disgusted. They're horrified. You know, a police officer was killed as a result of this fervor that was whipped up, this mania that was whipped up by the President of the United States. A woman who was there on his behalf, carrying forth his message, was shot and killed. 3 other people died. You know, this isn't what even his own supporters are in for. This isn't what they bought into.
Now, Vinny, Senator Bob Corker had an interesting take. He's a Republican from Tennessee, and he said late today that while he believes that Trump did incite his base, an impeachment would only make him stronger and further antagonize his base. So I thought that was interesting.
Well, I think he's right on target. I
agree.
mean, basically, his base are people that feel like they've been disenfranchised.
That's
and
right.
if you're going to disenfranchise them further, you think they're just going to go away? Can they prove this stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, he's obviously going to lawyer up just like he did before. And in many ways, Vinny, this does come down to a free speech issue. And whether based on the president's words on January 6th, those horrible events that followed were foreseeable. So we checked in with Andrew Warren. He's a current state attorney in Hillsborough County in Florida and a former special assistant U.S. attorney in D.C. And here's what he told us.
Charging people who are actually participating in the riot is straightforward. Charging people who weren't directly participating but encouraged it or organized it is trickier. You know, this brushes up against free speech. And our Supreme Court, going back 50 years, has made it clear you can't criminalize free speech unless you are directing someone to do something wrong and that it's imminent. It's called the imminent lawless action test. And that's really just a fancy legal phrase for saying, is somebody about to do a bad thing? And so here the standard is, was the president or Mr. Giuliani or anybody else directing and inciting people to do the riots? And was it likely that they were going to go out and do them? That's a really high standard to meet to hold somebody accountable for a crime.
And Vinny, if you're wondering what the standard of proof is in an impeachment trial, well, technically, there isn't one. The Constitution really doesn't speak to it. Some say since the consequences are so grave, it should be beyond a reasonable doubt, just like in a regular criminal trial. But in the end, often it just comes down to political considerations.
Right, and the bottom line is, if in fact the impeachment goes through the House and it goes to the Senate, you need 2/3. So you're going to need, about 18 Republicans to vote to remove him.
That's right. That's right. You're going to need that kind of support. I know there are a number of Republicans who don't agree with what he did, but I don't know if they're going to have the numbers to actually get a 2/3 vote.
Right. You have Mitt Romney because he did it last time, but
yes.
After that, maybe Sass, maybe a couple other ones. All right. Murkowski, probably
Yes,
as well.
absolutely.
Michael Ayala, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed. Wild, wild week here.